afternoon. Welcome, welcome. Welcome, Lyor. Do you have a suspicious side to sit on?
No, I don't.
I do. It's normally that side.
I don't know if it's cold or warmer here. I got my jacket on, and some people are wearing T-shirts and stuff like that. I'm going to take my jacket off.
He was actually out doing, we got weights in the green room and he was pumping them. I was quite impressed.
Pete, I'm so happy to be here with you, and especially here in Ibiza. We actually bumped into each other many years at Restaurant. It's one of my favorite restaurants. And I can tell you that my colleague Dan Chambers organized an offsite here for his whole EMEA team and all the cross-functional members of that team. So we've had an offsite going for the last couple of days. I got a chance to meet colleagues that had started working at the pandemic, so we've never actually met in person. 45% of our workforce has started during the pandemic and have never been in office or actually met one another. And it is spectacular to see them, to give them a hug, to see them talking about music and being here at this conference. Thank you for encouraging me to do this. I can't stand public speaking, but I love being with you. So, and I love being with them. So here's to the YouTube music team. Bravo. Who made a huge effort to come here. Thank you.
I don't want to spend too long on it, but we should do it at the beginning, but explain to people probably a little bit about what you did before I met you, before your current job, and how we first met together.
It was fantastic. Thank God there were planes back then, and your curiosity brought you to New York.
Exactly. So why? Just prior to joining a record company in 1983, I managed to get a Freddie Laker flight to New York. So I went to New York a couple of times before I got a job in the business, and I was actually a journalist, and a guy who worked at Billboard took me to the Paradise Garage. And then I got a job at London Records, and one of the first jobs that they said was to go back to New York and find some hits. So one of the first people I met, one of the first bands we ever went up after was Run DMC, who you'd already given to my friend Mel Medali and Paul Oakenfold, I think the first album. And so we went in hard and tried to convince you to sign the second album.
Right.
King of Rock.
So believe it or not, we've known each other for almost 40 professional years. And to me, that's just a miracle. To be able to work in the music business is such a privilege. And I was telling my crew that privilege also is a responsibility. And so thank you for being curious enough to get on a plane, come to New York and sign Run DMC. I was their original road manager. And my first job, I didn't even put my head down in New York. I'm from Los Angeles. I actually, I wasn't the original road manager because the original road manager was on a cocaine binge, and he was the only one with a passport. And I showed up at the office and had a valid passport, and they said, well, Run DMC's at JFK, would you mind going? And that's when I touched down in London and got an opportunity to see the whistle crew.
Absolutely.
Hear all the whistles and to see just the love affair that was going on with black music. And
I think so. London was one of the first places you brought the band to, right?
First place.
Yeah. And I remember taking you to an Indian restaurant to try and sign Run DMC on the Westbourne Park Road, and halfway through the meal, they just got up and sat on the pavement, all three of them. And I was saying to you, well, we've blown the deal. We're never going to sign them. And you said to me, no, they've just finished their food. That's what they do. So it's like, but we signed them. But talk a little bit more. So obviously then you become part of Def Jam.
Yes. You know, I got a long story, so I'm going to cut it short.
Quick.
I'm going to talk about my love affair of coming to Europe, and I actually just moved to London, and I felt like I broke the code on how to come to London avoiding jet lag. So what I used to do is I used to take the overnight flight to Amsterdam and go straight to the Bulldog. And after the Bulldog, I went straight to a bathhouse called Deco in Amsterdam. It's still there. I can't believe it. And I would lie down till about 5:30, 6 o'clock, and then board a plane to London, and I could go forever after that. And I was so convinced that I broke the code on jet lag.
What did they do to you at this place?
Just a sauna, and that's it. You know, I couldn't afford a massage, so.
No happy ending then?
No.
But anyway, back to the job. So you were you were tour manager, then you were partner at Def Jam. You were running
Yes.
Def Jam.
Yes.
Then you end up taking Def Jam to Universal.
Well, actually, that's not accurate. So we were a Polygram company.
Yeah.
And Polygram was the largest record company in the world, not Universal. Polygram was the number one record company, but they didn't have any presence in America. And that's when they started buying A&M Records, Mercury, Island, and then they bought Def Jam. And so I came to Universal through the Polygram transaction and went on. Part of that transaction is you either have to work for the company or you have to go on garden leave. And so I was 38 years old, and I had no intention of not being part of the music business. So I continued working and started a company called Island Def Jam. And yeah, I worked there for 5 years and had the best time. Killers to Kanye was a great label.
Absolutely. Just going back a bit before that, because I know when we've had a few conversations before today in preparation for this. What was it? Just what were your favorite memories of just being part of hip hop growing, rap music breaking through, and then bringing it into the kind of major system? Because you were outlaws at the beginning.
So how could I say? Ignorance is bliss. There's a lot of information right now that, to me, had I had it, I probably wouldn't have been as big a risk taker as I was during the time. And I think, you know, we're living in the information age, and everybody wants to know every detail of everything. And because I really didn't know much, I just kept doing my thing. For example, they said that fight for your right to party was a stiff, okay? And I didn't know what they meant by a stiff. And so I went and talked to the person, and they said, well, the data has come back from the radio station that nobody likes it. They're violently opposed to this record. And I said, well, that's strange, because when I go to the record store, there's hardly a record in the thing. So I didn't pay any attention to this so-called data and kept going. The record was lost 3 times before it came back. And in my career, I think that the violent hate for certain records are the ones that are part of an artist's journey that will be a coffee table book that we remember forever. It Takes a Nation of Millions. Also, it was a stiff. So many, Through the Wire, took 11 and a half months to break. All of those artists are going to have coffee table books. And many of the other the very good research, no one's going to remember. And so, yeah, ignorance and enjoying the process and feeling like the outsider and, you know, under the underdog. It was a beautiful feeling. I wish I had a digital camera back then because I would have loved many more photos of that.
Kanye did.
What?
Kanye seemed to have it. Have you seen his documentary?
Amazing.
Unbelievable.
Amazing. Right? Amazing.
Did he ever walk into your office and perform the first album and you were on your phone, not paying attention?
Yes, probably. Yep.
Yeah, unbelievable times.
Yeah, unbelievable times. I would say also the journey is so beautiful, but everybody's so focused on getting somewhere that they don't realize that the journey is just extraordinary. If you just are present enough to understand. What about you? When you were, well, you still are, doing your thing, and on the come up, did you actually recognize the joy that you were having, or was it so you were focused on the next move and the next move?
Probably guilty of being focused on the next move.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wish I could probably go back and enjoy it a bit more.
I did see one of the most remarkable memories I had in the last couple of years was your speech at the MITS. What a beautiful speech, because you included everybody on your journey. And that was so brave of you, because, you know, you actually named names and places and people, and it was just wonderful to watch you do that thing.
Yeah, I don't like public speaking,
Yeah.
believe it or not. In fact, I prepared a speech, and then when I walked in the room to do it, there wasn't a podium, and I said, well, what am I going to do with my speech? They said, you're going to have to remember it. Unfortunately, I managed to get a few notes up on a screen in the distance. I managed to do it that way anyway.
Pete, I'm just so curious, because you're an A&R executive, and then you became a DJ, and when did you give up being a record company executive the first time? I know you're a record company executive now, but the first time when you said, later to that, I'm going to focus on...
I think, cause, you know, a lot of us that started way back had to get a day job because DJing didn't pay enough. DJing definitely was the first thing. And so I just, if I had to earn money any other way, it was going to be involved with music, then that was what I wanted to do. So I think after the nearly 20-year journey working with Roger Ames and Tracy Bennett and all the FFRR crew and London crew, when it finally went into Warner's and got sold, the kind of job changed a bit. It was just at the time of like file sharing really exploding, and just seemed to get harder, and just the fun had gone out of it. So then I transitioned into the hobby as a full-time job for a few years before hooking up with WME and doing a different kind of corporate experience.
What was a job that you had the best time doing?
I think
of all the iterations of you.
Well, I think always DJing is the most fun, and obviously being on the radio has been great. But on a record company side, it's A&R, and just obviously lucky at the first time round of being in the right time and the right place, and that's why I wanted to come back to doing that, because I missed that part of my life of working with artists and developing artists. So that's what I'm doing now with 360. So
have you signed any artists?
A few. We'll get on to that. I want to talk about you.
Okay. All right.
So just finishing off quickly, you go from Def Jam, you end up running Warner Brothers for a few years, and
no, I was the chief creative officer for the Warner Music Group, and then became the CEO, and also had a magical time there. 10 years went like a blink. It was fun. Ed Sheeran, Bruno Mars, just Lizzo, bringing people along, watching Julie Greenwald, who's most definitely the best music executive I've ever witnessed, and just seeing people grow and do their thing.
Craig Coleman as well. He's a great friend of ours.
Yeah.
A dance guy, basically.
Big Beat Records.
Yeah.
He is just magical to watch them grow, and you know, during a time that this business was, for close to 20 years, struggling. And to see, the industry starting to expand and, conferences. I don't know, did this conference ever had a tough time other than COVID? I mean, I think it's nice to see. It's nice to see that the music industry is growing, and the question is, can it grow elegantly? I think still defining what does it mean to be a record company during this period, and what does the artist actually need? All these scale distribution platforms like DistroKid and TuneCore, what does that mean? Believe. It's just fascinating to watch what's going on, and it's just beautiful. I think it's just wild. It's the wild times.
You're still an enthusiast, clearly, but eventually you get out of the record business, where you leave Warner's, you start your own label.
I'm never out of the record business. I left Warner, and I started a company inside my den. And there were no human resources. I was managing around 5,000 people before. And then I started managing 3, and it was beautiful. And I enjoyed that process too, starting from scratch. I didn't listen to people like, what the fuck is he doing? Why is he starting this all over again? Doesn't he know that the business is in decline? He's a jerk for even, not retiring, it's things like that. And I feel like I never really worked for a living. I've avoided work all my life thanks to my parents. My parents sat me on my kitchen table and worked very hard to explain to me that if you find something that you absolutely adore doing, you could avoid work. And I'm happy to say I'm nearly 40 years of avoiding work. It's not that I don't work hard, but I do. But I just love what I do and don't want to not do it.
I remember getting into a spat with you a little bit. We both went after Kygo, and I couldn't quite believe that after you'd run, Def Jam Island, all the things you'd done in your career, CEO of Warner Brothers, Warner Music, and then you were chasing this kid around like me, trying to sign him.
Well, I was in Florence for a wedding, and I left Florence in my tuxedo and flew to Bergen. Have you been to Bergen?
No.
Okay, so you weren't there. I went to Bergen in a tuxedo, and Bergen happens to have the most rain in any European city, Bergen in Norway. I landed, there wasn't a cloud in the sky, and Kygo's father picked me up at the airport and said, "This is such a gorgeous day, would you like to go on a hike?" So I'm trying to sign the act, so of course I went on this hike, 3-hour hike in my tuxedo in Bergen, and he says, I like you, you're a good sport. Would you like to come home and meet Kygo's mom? She's prepared some smoked fish. So I went and had smoked fish, and we got on very, very well. And I had an agreement to sign for $30,000. The next few days, they took a picture. And that picture got on social media. Kygo wasn't there, it was the parents. And Sony found out. Were you working at Sony?
No, I was still on the Warner's side then, and I didn't go to Bergen. I sent someone else, so I didn't sign him. Okay. But and you got gazumped.
Yeah, $3 million. I'm sure Patrick Moxie's here. And the father was absolutely mortified because he gave me his word. And called me and said, what was he supposed to do? I said, of course he's got to take the money. And that was that. But I just love being...
You're on the front line.
On the front line. I mean, what a story.
Yeah.
Hiking in a tuxedo in Bergen.
It's good.
It's just nuts. So
let's come to YouTube. How come you end up running YouTube?
Well,
And is there an analogy between you arriving at YouTube and say what Jimmy Iovine did with Apple? Was there some
No. I don't compare, look at all. So I don't know what he was doing over there. But
selling headphones?
But I know what I wanted to do here. And so when I started 300, I was scared of two things. One, having no hits. You know what happens with a record company that has no hits?
Yeah.
It goes out of business. I was also worried about that Spotify and Apple were going to run away with distribution. And my investment in my perspective of the world is creators and record companies and publishers should capture the lion's share of the money. But if distribution was going to be so highly consolidated, it worried me that they were going to capture the money. So one day, I was asked by one of the bosses at Google if I could help them find someone to run music, and it made me so happy because I thought YouTube and Google was the perfect candidate to run and become hugely competitive in the space and bring diversity. And it's great to see Amazon and all the other companies jumped in as well. But one day, I just decided that the record companies started having a lot of hits, and I thought that maybe I could be helpful at YouTube, and it's just been incredible. One thing I can tell you, traditional media people aren't usually successful in tech companies. And one of the ways that I felt like I got through was remained my most authentic self. I declared very early on that I represent the music business. My hat is a recorded music hat. And when I say us, that's what I mean. The last thing they need is some traditional media person faking that he's a tech person, because I'm not. Like one step away from throwing pigeons to send messages. So I think it's been
You didn't go to Stanford then?
I didn't go to Stanford. I went to the U.
Right.
Does anybody know where the U is?
Yeah.
University of Miami in the late 70s. Cocaine Cowboys. National champs. Nobody. Oh, my God.
It's drug enhancement. Carry on.
Oh, shit.
No.
I'm back to YouTube.
Yeah.
And YouTube is full of people that have a great desire to do the right thing. And, you know, as it turns out, many engineers are frustrated musicians. I had no idea. So when I went, you know, there's a section that it just, no one's talking to each other, and it's, you could hear a pin drop, but you see a sea of Grateful Dead, Stones, you know, T-shirts, and you start recognizing that many of these engineers have a, you know, deep passion for the music. We actually have music rooms where they're pounding their drums and strumming their guitars and everything like that. And so there was a period of time that they didn't really understand what the issue is with YouTube. And because they felt like they were building something really great for artists and the industry. But I tried to explain to them that there are companies out there that didn't have an advertising tier. And they felt that they have gone around the industry saying advertising is destroying subscriptions opportunity. And so that's what they were fighting. Now everybody recognizes that it's better to get on a plane that has two engines, advertising and subscription. The twin engine growth story at YouTube is incredibly valuable. We've paid out over $4 billion last year in the rolling 12 months. The IFPI said total streaming music business was 16.9, so you could do the math. We're becoming a significant player, but that's just the fame, the fortune part. We spend an enormous amount of time around fame. What are the tools? How to make the tools more intuitive? How could artists and their labels and publishers actually find an audience, build an audience on YouTube? And it's been just wonderful. In fact, this pandemic has shown an explosion of usage by all the electronic industry. And it's just been insane to watch because, you know, we felt a huge responsibility to inform and pass accurate information about the pandemic, you know, stay home or what actually is going on a global basis. And we recognized very quickly that if you're asking people to stay at home, you have to entertain them.
Yeah. When were you? I was going to take you back to that point of like February 2020 when the pandemic was, you know, COVID-19 arrives, Wuhan. I mean, dance music had already had a pretty healthy relationship with YouTube just the previous couple of years with Boiler Room's success, Circle doing very well. In fact, I think dance music found a kind of different value system out of YouTube in the sense that it wasn't so much about just put the video on and hope people watch it, but actually DJs were starting to really forge their reputations, and some clubs and festivals were as well. But when the pandemic kicks in, you become a kind of lifesaver, like a broadcast channel.
I wouldn't say a lifesaver. It's just a platform that 2 billion daily active users use. So you were the lifesaver.
But I think the difference was people did jump on the platform and it was like open broadcasting 24 hours a day. I mean, we were all doing it from our bedrooms, literally.
Yes. And, you know, Circle was starting to do it from unique places, and they built incredible business and defected, and you just see spinning. A lot of these companies have had a investment in building subscribers and using it as their broadcast network, which has been really great to watch. Yeah. And I would say the lifesavers have been the DJs and these companies that have brought some sort of joy to a very dark period, a crazy period. You were telling me just recently that the first year was about, you should say,
well, I was just saying, I think the year one of the pandemic was just get in touch. You're locked away. You want to be in touch with your audience, your fans. You want to still be DJing, connecting with people. And I think for the first 6 months, everything was done with a big heart, and there was a lot of aid and money being raised as well to obviously help people. I think there was probably burnout by the end of that year, and I think there was a transition, maybe 2021, of like people really realizing this thing isn't going to end. Our businesses are screwed. How are we going to make some money? And I think the way then these brands, and many of them you just mentioned, start to work with you guys to monetize what they're doing was really interesting. I mean, you and me have butted heads in the past about dance music in terms of, I don't think you always got where the value was. I remember famously getting on a conference call with you and Craig Coleman trying to convince you that Daft Punk would be worth getting back together. And you were like, we didn't sign them.
I don't remember do you think?
That,
okay.
No, I'm not. I'm pulling your leg, but but maybe now, in your new position at YouTube, you kind of feel the community more and see what.
Definitely feel the community, and feel the love and watch the joy. I mean, it's undeniable, and then unfortunately, or fortunately, this is a data-driven company, so the data shows the enormous growth in electronic music, and it's undeniable to watch what's happening. and yeah, support is we're here in force. And it's just, and I know that there's workshops and a lot of effort going to show people the best practices and how to engage with your audience, how to build an audience, how to create subscribers, and we're constantly introducing new products. And the products are just watching our consumers, how they're engaging with music. And we recognize the fact that the music industry in general is very complicated, especially around rights. And we built and spent an enormous amount of money to build a content ID facility in Zurich. We're world class. And it was there to demonstrate to the music industry and the rest of the creative arts community that how much we respect copyright and how much we respect creation. But that is like the 2.0 version. We need the 3.0 version because there's a lot of creators that engage with music that get claimed immediately and lose all their money. And so we've decided to create a marketplace, and it's called Pangea, and the marketplace in order for the creators and the music industry to have a more reliable relationship with each other. I look at creators like radio stations. There are certain creators that are, young teenage girls that have built massive subscriber base, millions of subscribers, are teaching them how to do makeup. And they are a broadcast opportunity to break new music, provided you have a real relationship. And we're trying to build that real relationship. So Marketplace is something that we're rolling out this year.
I believe one of the key things of Marketplace is it allows you to use music legally, and everyone's getting paid, right? I think it's fascinating to see the way curation and creation has evolved on the platform, in the sense that take my hat off to Spinning Records and Ultra Records and Armada to a certain extent, who seem to get way ahead of the game and create their own. They look like TV channels to me. But then you see something like, I was down in Brazil, you got me to meet the wonderful Sandra in Sao Paulo a couple of weeks ago. And she was telling me about the guy that started the Brazilian kind of funk channel, who goes into the favelas. And that seems a bit like our own late, great Jamal Edwards, of someone that's a real personality who's created this kind of environment. So actually having your video on there becomes really, really valuable. But the whole kind of ecosystem around that channel is fascinating. It's got something like 65 million followers. No hits, really. I mean, they are hits, it's not international hits, but yeah.
He makes a lot of people happy in Brazil and all throughout Latin America.
But it's kind of being it's like a TV show stroke radio show, really. He's finding music, putting them on the channel, and kind of hosting it, right?
I'm so glad you learned about him. I thought you would know about him before that, having such deep Brazilian roots yourself. So it's odd, but good. Very, very
Thank you. That was your tip. So you've still got it.
So we're building. I want to talk about shorts.
Yep.
And shorts.
Well, let me preempt that. But
okay.
So I was we met a few weeks ago to prepare for this, and I was saying, YouTube's almost like old money, that you've been around so long. How do you feel about what's going on at TikTok and how that now seems to dominate youth culture and Instagram Reels? So tell us about your feelings about that and whether Shorts is a reaction to that.
So I feel short form video is really important, but it's got to lead somewhere. I'm scared for the music business if they feel like they're getting their music service through short form video. And so at YouTube, what we're trying to do is look at short-form video as just music discovery, an opportunity for the kids that have an abundance of choice, more choice than ever before, for them to find something that really resonates with them, and then help them get to the artist development place on YouTube, which is our main app, where they could hear interviews, see live performances, watch premium music videos, and from there, that they would, if they love, the artist and start digging the artist, and then they go into a listening phase in our subscription business where they are listening to, a bunch of songs that they have. So our job right now, our mission is to create short-form video that leads us somewhere. And to me, that's the most important thing.
Is this user-generated short-form video? Or
Yes, it's right. User-generated short-form video. And I just feel like this is just an amazing moment in time. We're watching these kids absolutely go nuts. 30 billion views a day on shorts. Okay? That's just insane when you think about it. 30 billion a day.
And what is the basic difference from TikTok? I mean, I'm not...
So the basic difference between the other short-form video platforms and shorts is that it's all in one ecosystem. And what we want is not to have something that has empty calories that leads you nowhere, but something that leads you into the artist development phase and the subscription part of our business. It's great for the industry, it's great for the artists, it's great for everybody. And I think it's critical. Okay. A critical mission on our part.
How important now is the creation of music videos? Obviously we grew up where, especially at the birth of MTV, where video was just everything. How important is it today? If you were starting 300 again today.
I'm old.
Right.
And I love the premium music video because it's a storytelling vehicle. It gives you more insight to an artist and a song. So I'm a big advocate for a video. Now, does a video have to be $1 million? I don't think so. And so I think that a video is still important. I think it's critical to storytelling, and I hope that it doesn't go away. I don't expect it to go away. I think it should gain even more traction. Think about what's happening to these kids. When we were coming up, relatively speaking, there was not this abundance of music and artists. With the evisceration of distribution, there's 1 billion bands swimming around these kids' ankles. What's the soundtrack of their youth? How did they graduate from being teenagers to adults without having a soundtrack of their youth? So I think short-form video allows them to crowdsource their tastes and to help, flip through the crates in their own way.
Do you get reports do you sit there as the man at the top kind of thing, getting reports of what's trending, what looked at on YouTube? And do you take that data and somehow use some kind of algorithm to help push something to break? I'm really looking for...
I never think about being on the top. I'm actually the closest to the gutter as much as possible, because that's where the information is. And yes, the data is critical, but the data with actually being present is incredibly valuable.
And if you saw a record like, I think we were talking to Dan about the Schaus record, which took like 4 or 5 years to kind of break through the system. If you're seeing people are looking for that video on YouTube, would that correlate into the way it's positioned on YouTube Music?
100%.
Right. Okay, that's good.
We're obviously doing a workshop up here.
Yeah, exactly. You didn't want to do too much workshop, did you? No.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing I was going to ask you, I think the way I use YouTube, if I want to find out anything almost any time about music, I would always go to YouTube first, and I usually find the answer if I'm looking for music. But if I know what I'm looking for, I probably, unless it's specifically I want to see the video, I probably wouldn't necessarily go to YouTube. Do you what kind of breakdown do you have of your user base in terms of what your customers?
We have an enormous amount of breakdown, all different ways that could make your head spin. But this is what we're doing. And that's what all these people that work at YouTube every day, we care deeply about two things: fame and fortune for artists and labels. And we push on it all the time. How does an artist find their fans? Once they find their fans, how could they make a living and feed their families? And so every day we're pushing on new tools, new ways for them to engage with their audience. And it's like I told you, being in the music business is a privilege, but it's also a massive responsibility. We saw last night Becky Hill perform for us, and it was just, thank you, by the way, yeah. And she was just a miracle because, you know, we're doing a business offsite, and here she is singing and dancing for us and being so generous with us. And so you see it, like, wow.
Big picture question, because you were so involved in running labels and particularly kind of holding the music business's hand as it kind of went from physical to digital. I know you're an optimist, so I'm hoping for an optimistic answer. But what's your big picture view of the music business right now? Where are we at if you were the doctor in terms of state of health, given all of the moaning and groaning that goes on about streaming services and not paying enough, and publishers not getting paid enough, and songwriters not getting paid enough? Where are we at?
Well, my son works in the music business, and I encourage him to work in the music business. I think it's a beautiful and incredible industry to work at. I think a lot of people may have misunderstanding of their purpose in the music industry and in their context. And I think that if you're musical and you love music and you want to help artists and labels and publishers and songwriters, then this is a fantastic industry. It's the tide is rising, but there's all sorts of threats and complacency and euphoria that I've been watching has been troublesome for me, because I think we have to be really, 20 years we saw the business go down, and so many colleagues lost their jobs, and it is really difficult and lean times. And so it's nice to see that people are hiring and people feel excited and euphoric, but I think it's important to keep diligent and practical and thoughtful and not worry about everybody else, more focused on what you can do to contribute. I think the essence of a record company hasn't been defined, like I said earlier. I think classic A&R is a art form that I cannot wait to see come back, because that to me is the fastest way to cut through the clutter, is a magical song and an incredible artist. So this
Sounds obvious, but how do we preserve that?
well, because everybody's running around with, data, like assigning artists with data, and I think data.
That's been the thing I hate the most, coming back into a frontline label.
Exactly. And I'm glad, because data can just help inform you, but you actually have to go to the studio, to the artist's home, to engage with the artist, to understand the capabilities of this artist, to understand what's under what could happen. And I think
you told me once, never sign an artist that you couldn't hang out with.
Well,
you'd be amazed how many people do actually.
No, I didn't say that. I said I would not
Tracy
sign an artist unless I went to their home.
Okay.
Because when I went to their home, I saw signs that helped me sign the artist. One of the first most important signs, if I saw their mother's photo somewhere, that was a green light. That was a green light for me to, when I went to their record collection, that was the next way that I discovered who they were. So,
if you were 21 now, or younger, would you advise yourself to be a manager or join a record label or join YouTube? What do you think you'd be doing?
If I was 21 years old now, I would be right back to signing artists, but with Web3 in mind. I think these communities that Web3 was designed for the music industry. We are first-class citizens of the blockchain. And I would go solve that immediately. Like, that would be my thing. A&R, signing artists, and supporting them in building communities and taking advantage of this most unique discovery of blockchain.
Are you paying much attention to that on YouTube? At YouTube?
I'm paying so much attention to it, yes, period, end of subject, for sure.
Have you bought a monkey or whatever they are, or like one of those?
Several.
Have you bought several? Are they hanging on your wall yet?
No?
No, they're not. Right, okay. Okay, I was going to ask you for crystal ball and predictions, but you've kind of just hit it there. Do you still listen to hip-hop?
I certainly do. I'm excited for Kendrick Lamar's album that's coming out any second.
So you don't just listen to the Gold Channel, all the old hits. You're into the new stuff.
Well, I do have a baby, so I'm taking her through a musical journey that started with Louis Armstrong and Billie Holiday.
That's good.
And she doesn't want to leave Billie Holiday at all, so we haven't.
She's 21 months old.
Thank you.
That's
Thank
amazing.
you, Pete.
No, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you also for YouTube being here, being our partner. I think more than anyone, it was like just the perfect partnership for the IMS because of the way the two cultures came together during the pandemic. So to come out the other side of it, hopefully, and have you here and your team is amazing. So
thank you. I can say one thing, that when I come here and I look at this, all these gatherings and people hugging each other and scheming, and by the way, it made me so clear that summertime is a nanosecond away. Like, where am I going to be for the summer? Like, that's like my big takeaway. I better book something quick.
Yeah, you better be here. You're close.
Thank you.
All right,
Thanks,
thank you.
everyone.
Thank you, Lyor.